Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the most dramatic and honestly paradoxical stories in all of human history. We're going to explore how Rome's absolute greatest military savior accidentally destroyed the very republic he was so desperately trying to save. It's a fascinating look at how just a single, seemingly logical shift in policy can trigger a massive domino effect that literally reshapes the entire world. Let's get started. Section 1. Rome on the brink. Okay, let's dive into this. To really understand this transformation, we have to set the stage. We're looking at a Roman Republic in the 2nd century BC, and it is in a state of absolute deep crisis. The foundations are totally shaking. You see, before Marius, only citizens who owned enough land could actually serve as soldiers. The poor were completely excluded simply because they couldn't afford to buy their own weapons and armor. But at the same time, Rome is facing massive external threats. You've got huge Germanic tribes threatening the northern borders. Down in North Africa, Jugurtha, the king of Numidia, is openly challenging Roman authority. And internally, well, corruption is spreading like a disease right through the Senate. Rome's traditional, exclusionary, wealth-based military was failing. It just wasn't strong enough anymore to defend this rapidly growing empire.
Section 2. The Unlikely Savior.
So, right into this massive systemic failure steps one of history's ultimate disruptors. His name was Gaius Marius. Now, Marius was not your typical Roman elite, not at all. He was born into a family with absolutely no noble background. In a society that was completely obsessed with pedigree, Marius rose to the top entirely through his own raw talent, extreme discipline, and unyielding determination. He defied every single expectation of the era to become one of Rome's greatest generals. But what makes Marius a truly central figure in world history isn't just that he won a bunch of battles. It's that he completely dismantled and then rebuilt the entire Roman military machine.
Section 3. Rebuilding the Roman army.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is exactly how Marius broke centuries of rigid tradition to overhaul this failing system. He introduced 5 specific changes that worked perfectly together to create an unbeatable professional legion. First, he opens the army to the landless poor, the very people who were previously barred from serving. But he doesn't just let them in. The state actually steps up. For the first time, Rome equips these soldiers with standardized weapons and armor, as well as standardized training. Suddenly, men who had been living in absolute poverty found immense purpose. They're getting steady pay, and critically, the promise of land once their military service is done. He took a struggling militia of wealthy landowners and transformed it into a highly disciplined professional fighting force, a real game changer. And this transformation wasn't just on paper, it was intensely physical. The soldiers under Marius became so incredibly disciplined that they actually earned a famous, lasting nickname, Marius's Mules. They got this name because, to move faster and rely way less on those vulnerable, slow-moving baggage trains, these guys carried nearly all of their own heavy equipment themselves on grueling, long marches. It really highlights the extreme discipline and the total physical transformation of the new Roman military force under his command. Because of this, Rome became the most powerful military force of the ancient world. But here is where we have to pause for a second and ask a really critical question. What is the actual price of this kind of revolution? I want you to think about the unintended consequences here. You have thousands of landless, desperate men who have just been given incredible purpose, steady pay, and the promise of a retirement estate. But where is that pay and land actually coming from in their eyes? Section 4. A fatal shift in loyalty. So, the crucial point is, this is exactly where our explainer takes a decidedly darker turn. We move from a story of military triumph to a massive psychological shift within the soldiers themselves. Under the old system, a wealthy landowner soldier fought out of civic duty, right? His loyalty was heavily tied to the Republic and the Senate. But with the new professional force, those soldiers no longer felt that same bond to a distant republic. Their allegiance shifted directly to the individual generals who personally paid them, personally rewarded them, and personally promised them land. They fought for the commanders standing right in front of them, not the politicians sitting back in Rome. This single, structural change to the army completely reshaped Roman politics forever. Section 5. The Fall of Rome. Which brings us to the climax of this historical domino effect, the devastating long-term political fallout. Look, Marius made Rome unbeatable on the battlefield, absolutely. But by doing so, he unintentionally planted the very seeds that destroyed the traditional republic. Because armies were now loyal to individuals rather than the state, he inadvertently opened the door to decades of brutal civil wars, extreme political violence in the streets of Rome, and ultimately, the complete collapse of representative government, paving the way for the rise of the emperors.
And this brilliantly illustrates that direct domino effect of Marius's reforms. We enter a completely new era where famous generals realize they hold all the true power. It starts with generals like Sulla, then moves to Pompey, then to the famous Julius Caesar, and eventually ends with Augustus. Every single one of these men was able to command armies whose absolute first loyalty was to them as commanders, rather than to the Roman Senate. They used these personally loyal professional armies to dominate Rome, bringing an end to the Republic for good.
We'll wrap up our explainer today with this thought. History remembers victories. Hidden pages of history remembers the consequences. Gaius Marius's vision absolutely created the greatest army the ancient world had ever seen, and for sure it saved Rome from immediate destruction. Yet, at the exact same time, he armed the very weapon that would destroy the republic he was trying to save. It leaves us with a pretty profound question to walk away with. When we solve today's crisis, are we accidentally engineering tomorrow's collapse? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.